The universe was old, but Kale was older. He moved through the darkness between stars like a shadow that had forgotten its owner. His scales, once bright like burning suns, had grown dull and gray. His wings, which could cover entire planets in their span, now felt heavy and tired. Each beat was slower than the last. Kyle was a cosmic dragon, the last of his kind. 10,000 years ago, there were many like him. They flew between galaxies and breathed fire that could create new stars. They watched over the universe like silent guardians. But one by one, they fell into eternal sleep. Some chose quiet moons. Others drifted into black holes. A few simply closed their eyes and never opened them again. Now only Kale remained, and he was tired. He had seen everything. He had watched the first life crawl from warm oceans on distant worlds. He had seen great empires rise with their silver towers and golden ships. He had watched those same empires crumble into dust and silence. He had witnessed wars that burned across star systems and peace that lasted for centuries. Nothing surprised him anymore. Nothing moved his ancient heart. Kale drifted past a dying sun. Its red light painted his scales in shades of blood and rust. He did not stop to watch it collapse. He had seen 1,000,000 suns die. What was one more? His journey had no destination, but his body knew where it wanted to go. Deep in his bones, he felt the pull of a small moon at the edge of an empty galaxy. It was a forgotten place. No civilization had touched it in thousands of years. The perfect place for an old dragon to rest forever. The moon grew larger in his vision. It was gray and covered in deep valleys and tall mountains. There was no air, no water, no life, just rock and silence and cold. Perfect, Kale thought. This will be my final bed. He descended slowly. His body was too weak for a graceful landing. He crashed into the surface, creating a crater that stretched for miles. Rocks and dust flew into the black sky before falling back down in slow motion. Kyle lay in the crater he had made, his massive body curled around itself like a cat seeking warmth on a winter night. But there was no warmth here. Only the cold emptiness of space pressed against him from all sides. He closed his great golden eyes and waited for the end. Days passed, or perhaps weeks. Time had no meaning for someone who had lived for 10,000 years. Kale drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes he dreamed of the old days when his brothers and sisters flew beside him through rivers of starlight. Sometimes he dreamed of nothing at all. The fire in his chest grew weaker. It was a small flame now, barely enough to keep his ancient heart beating. Soon it would go out completely, and Kyle would join his family in the endless dark. He was not afraid. He was not sad. He was simply ready. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. A sound broke through the silence. It was faint at first, like a whisper carried by winds that did not exist on this airless moon. Kale thought he was dreaming again, but the sound grew louder. A high-pitched scream, followed by a terrible crash that shook the ground beneath him. His eyes opened slowly. It took great effort just to lift his head and look toward the source of the noise. In the distance, he saw smoke rising from behind a mountain range. Not natural smoke. This was the dark, oily smoke of burning fuel and melting metal. A ship. Something had crashed on his moon. Kale lowered his head back to the ground. It was not his concern. Whatever had crashed would die soon enough in this lifeless place. He closed his eyes again, but then he heard something else. Voices. Small, frightened voices carried through the thin helmet speakers of survival suits. They echoed off the mountains and found their way to his ancient ears. Humans. Kyle knew about humans. They were a young species, barely a few 100,000 years old. They had only recently learned to leave their home planet and explore the stars. He had watched them from a distance, curious about these small, fragile creatures who dreamed so big. They were weak. They had no claws, no scales, no wings. They could not breathe fire or survive in the void. A single cosmic dragon could destroy their entire civilization with one breath. And yet, they kept pushing forward. They built ships and stations. They colonized hostile worlds. They refused to stay in their small corner of the universe. It was foolish, Kale thought. They were too young and too weak to be out here among the stars. But they came anyway. The voices grew closer. Kyle could hear them more clearly now. Adults speaking in urgent tones, and one smaller voice, high and clear like a bell, a child. Against his will, Kyle opened his eyes again. Through the dust and darkness, he saw 3 figures in white survival suits walking toward the mountain range. 2 of them moved slowly, supporting each other. The third was small, barely half the size of the others. They were heading toward his crater. Perhaps they had seen it from their crashed ship and hoped to find shelter in its depths. They did not know what waited for them in the shadows. Kale considered revealing himself. One look at him would send them running in terror. They would understand that they had landed on something far more dangerous than a lifeless moon. But he was too tired to move, too tired to care. Let them come. Let them see. It did not matter. Soon he would be dead, and they would follow not long after when their oxygen ran out. The 3 figures reached the edge of his crater and looked down into the darkness. The child's voice rang out, full of wonder rather than fear. "Look," she said, pointing at his massive form. "There's something down there." The 2 adults tried to pull her back, but she was already sliding down the crater wall, her small boots sending rocks tumbling ahead of her. Kale watched her approach with ancient, tired eyes. This small human child was walking straight toward a creature that could end worlds. And she was smiling. Foolish, he thought, just like all humans. But somewhere deep in his chest, beneath the dying flame of his heart, something stirred. A feeling he had not known in thousands of years. Curiosity. The child's name was Yuna. She was 12 years old, with dark hair tied in 2 messy braids and eyes that seemed too bright for someone so small. Her survival suit was white with patches of dirt and oil from the crash. In her arms, she carried a worn book with a faded cover. She stopped at the bottom of the crater and stared up at Kale without fear. Her helmet light shone directly into his golden eyes, but he did not blink. "You're big," Yuna said. Her voice crackled through her helmet speaker. Kale did not respond. He simply watched her with the same expression he might give a small insect that had landed on his claw. Curious, but not concerned. Behind Yuna, the 2 adults finally made their way down the crater wall. A man and a woman. Yuna's parents, Kale guessed. The man's left leg was injured, wrapped in makeshift bandages that were already turning red. The woman held her arm against her chest like it was broken. When they saw Kyle, they froze. The woman grabbed Yuna and pulled her back. "Don't move," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't make a sound." "But Mom, look at him," Yuna protested. "He's hurt too." Kyle almost laughed. Hurt? He was not hurt. He was dying. There was a difference. Injuries could heal. What was happening to him could not be stopped. The man stepped forward, placing himself between his family and the dragon. He had no weapon. Even if he did, it would be useless against a creature like Kale. But he stood there anyway, ready to fight with his bare hands if he had to. Foolish, Kale thought again. But also, brave. He could smell their fear. It hung in the thin, artificial atmosphere of their suits like a bitter perfume. But beneath the fear, there was something else. Determination, love, a willingness to die for each other. Kale had not seen such things in a very long time. "I will not harm you," he said. His voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. It vibrated through the ground and up through the human's boots. All three of them stumbled back in shock. It talks, the man whispered. Of course I talk, Kale replied. I have been talking since before your species learned to walk upright. I simply choose not to waste my words on those who cannot understand them. Yuna pulled free from her mother's grip and took a step forward. What are you? She asked. I am Kale. I am a cosmic dragon. I am the last of my kind. The child's eyes went wide. A real dragon, like in the stories? Stories? Kale tilted his massive head. What stories do humans tell about dragons? All kinds, Yuna said excitedly. Dragons who guard treasure. Dragons who fight knights. Dragons who fly through the stars and— Yuna, be quiet, her father interrupted. His name was Tai, and he was a ship engineer who had spent 20 years flying between colonies. He had seen many strange things, but nothing like this. It's okay, Dad. He said he won't hurt us. And you believe a giant dragon you just met? Yuna nodded. He looked sad, not angry. Sad things don't hurt people. Kyle stared at the child. Such simple logic, such innocent trust. It should have annoyed him. Instead, it made the strange feeling in his chest grow stronger. The woman's name was Hana. She was a doctor who had been traveling with her family to a new colony when their ship's engines failed. They had crashed on this moon with almost no supplies and only a few hours of oxygen left in their suits. Please, Hana said, her voice careful and respectful. We need shelter. Our ship is destroyed. If there is anywhere on this moon where we can survive, even for a little while. There is no shelter here, Kale replied. This moon is dead. No air, no water, no heat. You will die within hours. Tay's face fell. He pulled his wife and daughter close, holding them tight. This was it, then. This was how their story ended, on a forgotten moon, in the shadow of a dying dragon. But Yuna was not ready to give up. What about you? She asked Kale. Can't you help us? I am dying, child. I came here to rest forever. I have no power left to save anyone, not even myself. But you're a dragon. Dragons have fire and magic, and I have nothing. Kale's voice was heavy with exhaustion. My fire is almost gone. My magic faded long ago. I am just an old creature waiting for the end, same as you. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She sat down. Right there, in the dust and rocks of the crater, she crossed her legs and set her worn book in her lap. Her parents called out to her, but she ignored them. What are you doing? Kyle asked. If we're both going to die, Yuna said, then I don't want to die standing up and being scared. I want to do something I love first. And what is that? Yuna held up her book. Reading stories. Kyle stared at her. You crash on a dead moon. You meet a dying dragon. You have hours left to live. And you want to read stories? Yes. Why? Yuna shrugged. Because stories make me happy. And if I have to die, I want to die happy. Her parents had given up trying to pull her away. Tay sat down beside his daughter, his injured leg stretched out before him. Hana joined them, cradling her broken arm. If this was truly the end, they would face it together. Kyle watched this small family prepare for death with a book instead of tears. They did not beg. They did not scream. They simply sat together and waited. Something cracked inside the old dragon, a wall he had built over thousands of years, a wall made of loneliness and loss and the belief that nothing in the universe could surprise him anymore. These humans surprised him. Very well, he said, lowering his head until it rested on the ground near them. Read your story, child. I have nothing better to do while I wait for the end. Yuna's face lit up with a smile that seemed too bright for such a dark place. She opened her book, cleared her throat, and began to read. Once upon a time, in a galaxy far away, there lived a girl who wanted to touch the stars. Her voice was small but clear. It filled the crater and reached Kale's ancient ears, and for the first time in 10,000 years he listened, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. The story Yuna read was about a girl named Bora who dreamed of flying among the stars. Bora was poor. She lived on a small farming planet where the sky was always gray and the work was always hard. Everyone told her that girls like her did not become pilots. They became farmers or workers or nothing at all. But Bora did not listen. Every night, she looked up at the stars and promised herself that one day she would touch them. Kyle listened as Yuna's voice painted pictures in the darkness. Bora worked 3 jobs to save money for flight school. She failed her entrance exam twice, but passed on the 3rd try. She was the worst pilot in her class, but she practiced every day until she became the best. She faced enemies who wanted to destroy her dreams, but she never gave up. In the end, Bora became the captain of the greatest ship in the galaxy. When Yuna finished the story, she closed her book and looked up at Kale. "Did you like it?" she asked. Kale was silent for a long moment. His golden eyes reflected Yuna's helmet light like twin suns. "It is unrealistic," he finally said. "No species succeeds through determination alone. There are limits, there are rules. The universe does not care about dreams." "But Bora made it," Yuna replied. "She touched the stars." "In a story, stories are not real." Yuna tilted her head. "My teacher says stories are the most real things there are. She says stories show us who we want to be." Kyle made a sound deep in his throat. It might have been a laugh or a sigh. Even he was not sure. "Your teacher is a fool," he said, "and you are a fool for believing her." Yuna smiled. "That's okay. My dad says all the best people are fools." Tay shifted uncomfortably. He had indeed said that many times. He just never expected his daughter to repeat it to an ancient cosmic dragon. "Tell me another story," Kyle said. The words surprised everyone, including Kale himself. He had not meant to say them. They had simply escaped from somewhere deep inside him. Yuna's face brightened. "Really? You want to hear more?" "I have nothing else to do," Kale replied quickly. "And listening to your voice is less boring than listening to silence." It was a lie, and they both knew it, but Yuna did not point this out. She simply opened her book again and found another story. This one was about a boy named Jin, who fell in love with a star. Every night, Jin would climb the highest mountain on his planet just to be a little closer to his beloved. The star, touched by his devotion, fell from the sky to be with him. But when she landed, she found that she could no longer shine. Her light had gone out. Jin did not care. He loved her anyway. He held her hand and told her that she did not need to shine for him to love her. She was enough, just as she was. The star began to cry. No one had ever loved her for herself before. Everyone had only loved her light, and in her tears, a new kind of brightness grew. Not the cold fire of space, but the warm glow of a heart that finally felt at home. When Yuna finished, she noticed something strange. A single tear was rolling down Kyle's massive cheek. It was not water. It was liquid fire, glowing orange and red as it traced a path across his gray scales. It fell to the ground and melted the rock where it landed. "Are you crying?" Yuna asked softly. "Dragons do not cry," Kale said quickly. "It is merely a physical response to dust in my eyes." There was no dust. The moon had no wind to carry it. "It's okay to cry," Yuna said. "My dad cries all the time." Tay made a noise of protest. "I do not cry all the time." "You cried at my birthday party. That was different. You were growing up so fast. You cried at that movie about the dog." "Everyone cried at that movie." The dog died. You cried when Mom made your favorite soup. It was really good soup. Hana laughed despite the pain in her arm. Even in the shadow of death, her family could make her smile. Kyle watched them argue and tease each other. He watched how Ty ruffled Yuna's hair. He watched how Hana leaned her head against her husband's shoulder. He watched how Yuna sat in the middle of her parents like she was the safest person in the universe. This was what love looked like. Kale had forgotten. "Tell me about your people," he said suddenly. "Tell me about humans." Yuna thought for a moment. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Tell me who you are. Tell me what makes you special." Yuna laughed. "We're not special. We're just us." "That is not an answer." "Okay." "Okay." Yuna set down her book and turned to face the dragon fully. "Humans are, well, we're kind of weak. We can't breathe in space. We can't fly without ships. We get sick easily and we don't live very long." "This does not sound special," Kale observed. "I'm not done. We're weak, but we don't let that stop us. When something tries to kill us, we find a way to survive. When something seems impossible, we try anyway. When we fall down, we get back up." "Why?" Yuna blinked. "What do you mean, why? Why do you keep trying? If you are weak, if you know you cannot win, why do you not simply give up?" The question hung in the air between them. Yuna was quiet for a long time. Then she reached over and took her father's hand. "Because giving up means the story ends," she said. "And I don't want my story to end, not yet. Not ever." Kale stared at her. This small child had just said something that no philosopher in the entire universe had ever been able to put into words. Humans did not survive because they were strong. They survived because they refused to believe in endings. They were foolish. They were stubborn. They were impossibly, wonderfully alive. And for the first time in 10,000 years, Kyle felt something other than tiredness. He felt hope. The flame in his chest, which had been dying for so long, flickered and grew just a little brighter. "Read me another story," he said. "I want to hear more." Yuna smiled and picked up her book. Outside, the oxygen in their suits continued to count down toward 0. Death was still coming for all of them. But for now, in this crater on a forgotten moon, a dying dragon and a human family shared something precious. They shared stories. And in stories, anything was possible. Hours passed, but no one noticed. Yuna read story after story. Some were about heroes who saved worlds. Some were about ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Some were sad. Some were funny. Some made Kale think about things he had not thought about in centuries. When Yuna's voice grew tired, Tay took over. His voice was deeper and rougher, but he read with the same love his daughter showed. He told stories about brave soldiers and clever scientists, stories about people who made terrible mistakes and found ways to make them right. When Ty needed to rest, Hana took the book. Her voice was soft and gentle, like a river flowing through a quiet forest. She read stories about mothers and daughters, about families torn apart and brought back together. And when Hana's arm hurt too much to hold the book, Yuna started again. The cycle continued, round and round, voice after voice. Kyle listened to everything. He learned about human history, the wars and the peace, the failures and the triumphs. He learned about their art and their music and their endless need to create. He learned about their fears and their dreams and the strange way they kept hoping, even when hope made no sense. "Tell me about your greatest victory," Kyle said during a pause between stories. Tay thought about it. "That's a hard question. We've won many battles." "Not battles. Victory. The moment when your species proved itself to the universe." The three humans looked at each other. It was Hana who finally answered. "I don't think we have one moment like that," she said. "Our victories are small, personal. A doctor who saves one patient, a teacher who helps one student, A parent who raises one child to be good. That seems insignificant, Kyle said. Maybe it does. Hannah smiled. But those small victories add up. One saved patient becomes a scientist who cures a disease. One helped student becomes a leader who brings peace. One good child becomes a parent who raises more good children. You build your greatness piece by piece. Yes, we don't have magic or cosmic fire. We only have each other. And somehow, that's always been enough. Kyle was silent as he considered her words. In his long life, he had seen great empires fall because they believed they were too powerful to fail. He had watched mighty species destroy themselves through arrogance and greed. They all thought they were special. They all thought they would last forever. But humans were different. They knew they were small. They knew they were weak. And instead of being crushed by this knowledge, they used it. They banded together. They helped each other. They turned their weakness into strength. It was perhaps the most brilliant survival strategy in the universe. "Tell me about your greatest failure," Kyle said. The mood shifted. Tay's face grew serious. Hannah looked away. Yuna spoke up. "We've done bad things. Really bad things. Wars that killed millions of people. Hatred that tore families apart. Times when we hurt each other for no reason at all. And how did you survive such things?" "We learned." Yuna's voice was small but firm. "Every time we failed, we tried to learn from it. We built memorials so we wouldn't forget. We taught our children about our mistakes. We promised to do better." "And did you do better?" "Sometimes, not always, but we keep trying." Cale closed his eyes. "I have watched many species in my long life. Most of them could not admit their failures. They hid them, forgot them, repeated them. They destroyed themselves because they could not learn." "We're good at learning," Tay said. "We have to be. It's the only advantage we have." The dragon opened his eyes and looked at this small family. They were running out of oxygen. Their suits showed less than 2 hours of air remaining. Death was creeping closer with every breath. And yet, they sat here telling stories, sharing their history, teaching an ancient dragon about what it meant to be human. They were not crying. They were not begging. They were simply being themselves until the very end. "I have a question," Yuna said suddenly. "Can I ask you something?" "You may ask. I may not answer. Why did you come here to die alone?" The question cut through Cale like a blade of starlight. He had expected many questions from the child. Questions about his power, his age, his species. Questions about the secrets of the universe or the nature of time itself. But she had asked the one question he had never allowed himself to consider. Why alone? "Because there was no one left," he said finally. "My family is gone. My friends are gone. Everyone I have ever loved has faded into the dark. I came here because I had nowhere else to go." Yuna stood up and walked toward him. Her parents reached for her, but she gently pushed their hands away. She walked right up to Kyle's massive head and placed her small hand against his cheek. Through her suit glove, he could barely feel the pressure. But somehow he felt it more strongly than anything he had felt in 10,000 years. "You're not alone now," Yuna said. "We're here, and even if we can't stay long, we're here right now." Cale's eyes burned with more tears that he would never admit to. "You are dying," he said. "In 2 hours, you will be gone." "Then we have 2 hours of not being alone. That's pretty good, right?" The dragon made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You are the strangest creature I have ever met, Yuna." "Thanks, I think." She stepped back and returned to her parents. Tay wrapped his arm around her, and Hannah pressed a kiss to the top of her helmet. In that moment, Cale made a decision. He had come here to die. He had accepted the end of his story. He had been ready to let his fire go out forever, but these humans had shown him something he had forgotten. Stories did not have to end in darkness. Sometimes they could end in light. Sometimes they could start again. If these small, fragile, beautiful creatures could face death with courage and love, then perhaps an old dragon could find a little more fire in his heart. "Stand up," Kale said. The family looked at him in confusion. "Stand up," he repeated. "We are leaving this moon." Yuna's eyes went wide. "But you said you couldn't." "I know what I said. I was wrong." Kyle lifted his massive head, and for the first time in years, his eyes burned with their old, golden fire. "I thought my story was ending, but you have shown me that stories do not end until we choose to let them end. And I choose to continue." He rose to his full height. His wings spread across the crater, blocking out the stars. His scales began to glow with inner light as the fire in his chest roared back to life. He was still old. He was still tired. He might have only days left instead of years. But he had enough. Enough to save 3 human lives. Enough to repay them for the gift they had given him. Enough to write one more chapter in his story. "Climb onto my back," he commanded. "I will carry you to safety." And for the first time since they crashed on this moon, the family began to believe they might survive. Climbing onto a cosmic dragon was not easy. Kyle lowered himself as much as he could. But his smallest scale was still larger than Yuna's entire body. Tay went first, using his engineer's skills to find handholds in the ridges of the dragon's armor. His injured legs screamed with pain, but he ignored it. He had to be strong for his family. Hana went next, climbing with one arm while the other hung useless at her side. Tay reached down and pulled her up beside him. They sat together in a small valley between 2 massive spines, holding each other tight. Yuna climbed last. She was the fastest, scrambling up the dragon's side like she had been doing it her whole life. When she reached the top, she sat cross-legged on Kale's neck, her worn book still clutched in her arms. "Are you ready?" Kyle asked. "Yes," Yuna shouted. "Hold on tight. This may be rough." His wings beat once, twice, 3 times. The ground fell away beneath them. Dust and rocks scattered in all directions as the ancient dragon rose into the black sky. Kyle had not flown in years. His wings ached. His bones protested. Every movement sent waves of pain through his old body. But he pushed through it all because 3 small lives depended on him. They broke free of the moon's weak gravity and entered the void of space. Stars surrounded them on all sides like diamonds scattered on black velvet. Nebulas painted the darkness in shades of purple and blue. Distant galaxies spiraled slowly, unchanged since the beginning of time. Yuna pressed her face against Kale's neck and stared at everything in wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," Kale agreed. "It is." He had seen these stars 1,000,000 times. He had flown past these nebulas and through these galaxies more times than he could count. But somehow, seeing them through Yuna's eyes, they seemed new again. "Where are we going?" Tay called out. "There is a human colony 3 light-years from here," Kale replied. "I can reach it in a few hours." 3 light-years? That would take our ship months." "Your ships are slow. I am not." Kale's body began to glow brighter as he gathered his remaining power. The fire in his chest spread outward, warming his passengers against the cold of space. Then, with a burst of golden light, he shot forward faster than any human vessel had ever traveled. The stars became lines. The void became a tunnel of light. Space itself bent around them as the cosmic dragon rode the currents of the universe. Yuna laughed with pure joy. This was better than any story she had ever read. This was magic. This was real. Tay and Hana held each other and watched the universe flow past them. They had accepted death just hours ago. Now they were flying on the back of a dragon through the stars. Life, they decided, was very strange sometimes. The journey took 3 hours, 3 hours of light and speed and wonder. 3 hours during which Cale pushed his old body to its absolute limit. He could feel himself growing weaker with every passing moment. The fire in his chest was burning through his last reserves of strength. But it was worth it. When the human colony finally appeared before them, a cluster of silver stations orbiting a blue planet, Kyle felt something he had not felt in 10,000 years. Pride. He had saved 3 lives. He had done something good before the end. "We made it," Una breathed. "We actually made it." Cale slowed his flight and approached the largest station carefully. Alarms began to sound. Ships launched to investigate the massive creature approaching their home. Weapons powered up. But then someone on the station saw the 3 figures on the dragon's back. Someone recognized human survival suits. The alarms stopped. The weapons powered down. A voice came through the station's speakers, broadcast into the void. "Unidentified. Dragon? You have humans on board. Please approach docking bay 7. We will have medical teams ready." Kyle landed gently on the station's outer platform. Workers and doctors rushed forward as Ty, Hana, and Una climbed down from his back. Stretchers appeared. Questions were shouted. Chaos filled the air. But Una did not join her parents on the stretchers. She turned back to Cale and ran toward him, throwing her small arms around the edge of his claw. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for saving us." Cale lowered his massive head until his eye was level with hers. "Thank you for saving me," he replied. "I didn't do anything. I just read stories." "You did everything." His voice was growing weaker. His glow was fading. "You reminded an old dragon that stories never truly end. They simply change into new ones." Una's eyes filled with tears. "Are you going to die now?" "Perhaps. Perhaps not. The universe is strange like that. Will I ever see you again?" Kyle was silent for a long moment. Then very gently he touched his claw to her chest. "I will always be here," he said, "in every story you tell, in every dream you dream. When you look up at the stars, I will be there too, flying between galaxies, watching over your people, waiting to see what impossible thing you will do next." Una smiled through her tears. "I'm going to become a pilot. Like Bora in my book, I'm going to touch the stars. I know you will, and I will be watching." He pulled back and spread his wings one final time. The station workers stared in awe at the ancient creature before them. No one moved. No one spoke. "Goodbye, Una," Kyle said. "Thank you for your stories." "Goodbye, Kyle. Thank you for listening." The dragon launched himself into the sky. He flew straight up, past the station, past the planet's orbit, past the edge of the solar system. The humans watched until he was nothing but a fading point of golden light against the stars. Years passed. Una grew up. She became a pilot, just as she had promised. She flew ships across the galaxy, exploring worlds no human had ever seen. She told stories wherever she went, stories about heroes and dreamers, about small people doing big things, about the power of hope in the darkest places. And sometimes, late at night, when she looked out her ship's window at the endless stars, she thought she saw something moving in the distance, something massive and golden, flying between galaxies like a shadow that had finally found its light. She would smile and wave, even though she knew he probably could not see her. But maybe, just maybe, he could. Because stories never truly end. They simply become part of something bigger. And somewhere in the universe, an ancient dragon flew on. His heart forever warmed by the memory of a brave little girl who had faced death with nothing but a book of stories and a spirit that refused to break. That was the human spirit. And Cale knew at last why they would survive long after the stars themselves had gone dark. because they carried the universe's greatest fire inside them, not in their chests, but in their hearts.